of the Community Oversight Board for the month of September. We'll start with a reading of the appeal statement. Pursuant to the provisions of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Community Oversight Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law judicial writ. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to assure that time and procedural requirements are met. We have established a quorum of the board, and we're prepared to move forward with business. First order of which is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. The minutes have been included in the packet to the board, and at this time, if there's any unreadiness, discussions, or modification, the floor is open. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Is there any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. That moves us to the chair's remark. Please keep that on the agenda, but I have none for today. Which moves us into the executive director's report. Director Fitcher.
Good afternoon. The first order of business on my report is the Mncl personnel update. I completed the first round of interviews for the investigator and social worker positions. The second interview process is underway and a selection will be made soon. I am moving forward on filling the vacancies in our office. That includes the assistant director position and an administrative manager. I was out of the office from August the 25th to September the 5th on vacation, and then we were on we were out of the office September the 11th through the 16th at a conference. We continue to have our executive and MOU committee meetings. The last one we had was on Thursday, September the 22nd. And the executive members that were present there were Milliner, Goddard, and Holloway. Absent was Hildreth and Witzel. The next MOU committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October the 6th at 5 p.m. and it is open to the public. We continue to have trainings in our office. I find it important that we continue to stay abreast of what's happening in the oversight and accountability, oversight and accountability related work. And so each personnel staff member is encouraged to find trainings, and then we also have trainings collectively. Myself, the community liaison, D'Amica Robinson, and two of our investigators, Investigator Johnson and Simmons, we all attended the NACO's 28th National Conference, which was in Fort Worth, Texas. It was very enlightening to come together with other professionals in the oversight field and learn of what best practices are across this nation. I attended Cornell University's webinar, Crisis Management, Thinking About the Unthinkable, which was very helpful and insightful. NACO is hosting a virtual training, evidence-based policing, on Tuesday, October the 11th, and it's at noontime. And so I will sponsor any board member that wants to attend that. Just let me know and I'll get you registered for that. It's usually an hour long around lunchtime. I also attended the MMPD's Interpersonal Crimes Branch monthly meeting. The department head and elected officials monthly meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. I attended the Metro Human Resources Coordinators meeting. I had Ms. Robinson present for that. And I also attended the Behavioral Health and Wellness Advisories Committee's ad hoc meeting, and Mr. Crowell Williamson was present for that. We continue to try to do work in the community to just share our services to the community. Myself and the community liaison, Ms. Robinson, were invited to WFSK's radio station, Jazzy 88.1, to share COB information with the public. I was a co-presenter with former COB Chair Arnold Hayes at the NAACP 76th Annual Tennessee State Conference State Convention. We also attended the Mayor and Chief Drake's Community Safety Update and Roundtable discussion, which was hosted in this neighborhood and community. And then Ms. Robinson and I spent some time out in this community passing out flyers to try to encourage people to attend this meeting today. I also talked with Ms. Robinson about making contact, and she did, with MNPD's Deputy Chief Green to just understand what they were doing in the community and connect with them to see how we could be assistance in certain areas in that regard too. We have our next monthly board meeting. It's going to be in South Nashville. It's going to be at the Coleman Community Center, which is at 384 Thompson Lane. That meeting is scheduled for October the 26th. I think the time is from 5 to 7, but I'll verify that. And it's located at the intersection of Thompson Lane and Nolensville Road. Ms. Robinson will be out in that community passing out flyers and connecting with residents there so that we can encourage them to attend the meeting. And also, for the board, we'll need to choose dates for November and December because right now our schedule kind of coincides with the holidays. And so if we want to take that up today, we can go ahead and get that on the books so that we can pick out a date for November and December. Mr. Yoon our Attorney Yoon will be back on Monday, and it'd be good to have him back. I know I had a different date. I had the end of September, but he'll be back on Monday. Our research analyst, Mr. Gavin Crowell-Williamson, he reports that he attended many trainings related to research, grant funding, incarceration of the mentally ill, public safety, and information technology. He also made contact with numerous oversight agencies that audit and monitor body-worn camera video footage, conducted interviews with them to find out what best practices are. I think it's really a timely thing, as well as he's working on a policy advisory report related to body-worn cameras, and we'll hear from him a little later. And then he also continues to work on, the many different things that we have asked him to do pretty quickly, turnaround times, and so he's been doing that and getting it done for us. I'm very appreciative of your work. Investigations, the Mncl continues to receive calls from the public. We received a total of 3 investigative complaints. And then we also received 12 non-complaint contact calls, meaning people are calling, but once we listen to what they are, trying to explain to us and convey to us what happened to them or what they want to talk about, sometimes those things are outside of jurisdiction or they don't belong to us. I have multiple calls this week regarding something that happened many, many years ago that might be proceeding in court currently, and sometimes I think there's a little confusion about what we can and cannot do. And so we do spend a lot of time trying to decipher what we can do if it actually involves Metro Police and how we can assist, public when they call. Sometimes we have to refer them to many other agencies, or we can't really assist them at all, unfortunately. The MNC investigators also submitted 4 requests for records. And sometimes that's just, when we put that information in here, I realized this month that we're putting information on our request directly to Metro. That does not include the many other requests that we ask for records from, whether it be the county clerks, whether it be, different agencies that are still related to that specific complaint, but it may not just be MNPD records that we're requesting, but only here are we documenting MNPD records requests. All right, the body-worn camera audio redaction update. I can talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to move that to the end. The COB MOU committee met and discussed the current MOU between COB and the MNPD. A letter from the board chair was sent to Chief Drake requesting a meeting with proposed dates to begin negotiations. And we got a response from Captain Laura today. Commander Laura gave us an alternate date because he said the week that we proposed I guess the committee or whoever they use are going to be at some kind of training. And then the following week, they'll be at an IACP conference. And so they proposed another date. I think it is, hold on one second. It is October the 27th. And so he can talk about that a little later. I also sent you an email of the proposed dates, and he said if that date doesn't work for us, that we can propose a different date. The Forest Review Board, there was 2 Forest Review Board hearings which were scheduled for this month. One is tomorrow. Investigator Vernon Johnson will be attending the one tomorrow because it involves a case where I have been named as a defendant in a court case. And so he is going to respond to that hearing because it will be a conflict, I believe, for me. He also attended the one on September the 1st because I was out of the office. And I didn't really get into the information in regards to that, but I'll let the board know about it. I actually have not received notification that I haven't been served with the lawsuit, but it is in the system some kind of way, and I was, made aware of it. Myself, the District Attorney General, and the Chief of Police in regards to a police officer involved shooting. But I haven't been served. And so I don't know if, I really don't have much information on it now, but the more information that I get, I will share with you. JIS, I'm going to skip around on this form a little bit. I reached out to JIS, to their executive director to get an update related to us moving to the JIS platform and building out a new case management system. And the reason why that is important is because Metro ITS said that they would not be able to handle the build out of a new case management system, and that they believe that JIS was the best platform for that. So I'm waiting to hear back from the JIS Policy Committee, which really is, which I think it is a board that is made up of the general sessions judges, the Metro clerk, the public defender, and maybe even the DA. I'm not really sure who's all on the committee, but I am waiting to hear from them. I also sent a letter to Metro's property director in regards to a relocation effort. As I've said to you all on many occasions, what I've heard from the public is that it's a very difficult place to find, as well as parking is just non-existent. Myself has received 3 tickets this week. So it would be helpful if we could move to a different location. And the gentleman that is now our new property director, Mr. Abraham Westcott, sent me back an email that had kind of spelled out how how Metro was moving forward on trying to relocate many different departments. And I offered some suggestions on why I think that we should be prioritized. Because we do have a space that if someone else could absorb our space, we could get pushed up in that priority line. And so I haven't heard back yet to see what they thought about that. But I do think us trying to move to a different location would be beneficial to the public. In general, I mean, overall, the optics with being housed with Metro Legal and the District Attorney's Office has proved not to work out really well for us. We went to we were invited, the COB was invited as guests to the NCRC, which is the Nashville Conflict Resolution Center. Myself, Board Member Joe Brown, Researcher Gavin Crowell Williamson, and our Community Liaison, D'Amica Robinson, we all attended that, which was very nice. Also, I wanted to go back to, there's 2 things here. The body-worn camera audio redaction update, MMPD sent back their audit record on 9/15 and 9/23. They have completed their audit of the body-worn cameras and in-car camera videos that were requested and sent to us. What they said was, with the audio redaction audits complete, we have delivered the audit logs for a total of 47 MNCO requests, which was 40 audit files. Within these 47 requests, we have audited 343 individual body-worn camera, in-car camera videos. 71% of those videos had no audio redactions, and only 3 were found to have had profane words muted. The last of these videos was redacted on the MNCO request, which was completed and delivered to MNCO on 9/15/2021. Past that date, we found no audio redactions of profane words. I do think that there's more discussion here on the agenda, so we can get back into that a little later. And then also, this really talking about Metro Legal's opinion will conclude my report. So Metro Legal sent an opinion related to the questions posed by the board and the executive committee, and that centered around the board's ability to seek an external investigation regarding MNPD's editing of body-worn camera video footage that was sent to the Mncl. The opinion memorandum will be discussed at this meeting, I think pretty much in a few minutes. And I also asked Metro Legal to provide an update related to a Metro Human Resources issue regarding MNCO's voter registration requirement / restriction for persons seeking employment with the MNCO. I think that gives us opportunity to hear from you regarding that. I can conclude at this point and we can move forward. So, yeah, so that concludes my report.
Excellent report. Are there, keeping in mind, members of the board, that we do have an independent discussion item on the body-worn camera editing investigation, and a separate item also for Metro Legal update that does include an opinion on employment. And so, barring that, are there any questions for the executive director on any other part of her report? Floor is open. Madam Director, on the issue of MNCO legal resources, I'm trying to make sure that that's not covered anywhere else in the agenda. I don't think that yes, it is, Metro Legal Opinion, PRR Assistance and Resource Allocation. Okay, so I'll hold until then. Anything else? Any other questions for the Executive Director? Hearing none, thank you for your report. Next item on the agenda is board discussions. Starting with interdepartmental communications. That's just simply a reminder of what's in the bylaws, and that is that communications between other departments and externally are reserved for the executive director and for the chairperson of the board. Of course, any board member who has anything that they'd like to communicate interdepartmentally or to an external source like the media or whatever, feel free to route those through the executive director or to myself. I appreciate that continued cooperation in that regard. Yes, Mr. Goddard.
I believe, and I haven't looked, so I apologize. I believe what the bylaw says is no one can speak for the board in that manner without going through. Individuals can communicate so long as they make it clear they are not speaking for the board. If we need to modify that, that would need to go through the Rules Committee, I think, but that's my understanding.
Any discussion, input, feedback?
Well, he can't speak independently, but if he's given permission to do so, then he can speak for the board. But he had to get permission first.
Understood and agreed that should the board designate an individual to speak on its behalf, of course, that individual does have that authority. Notwithstanding, of course, we're not going to abridge anyone's First Amendment right, but we're just trying to reinforce the protocol that any official communications between this body and any other department or externally shall be reserved for the executive director and or the chair of the board. Okay? Next item on the agenda, Madam Director, is to propose resolution reports and accelerated review schedule. This is a continuing takeoff on something that this entire board has continued to be passionate about, which is our mission of taking care of the people's business through investigations and proposed resolutions to the MNPD of instances of misconduct. Dr. Hildreth, Judge Brown, and others, and myself, we continually have expressed that need. And so it kind of took off on what Dr. Hildreth recommended last meeting about when we get back up to speed, let's double up on the people's business. And having said that, I'll turn to Director Fitchard for some kind of update on that.
Thank you. So we have 7 cases, I have them here, that are ready for review. What that means is when Attorney Yoon returns, which he's returning on Monday, his return on Monday would be the 3rd. And with that, because we have built into our rules that we have to have post those PRRs that are complete within 5 days of a meeting, right? So we have to get them. So when I look at this calendar, with him coming back on the 3rd, if in fact we were able to get, he had the week to work on those. I don't know if he would be able to complete all 7 that first week, but as many as he could. The possibility of us having a meeting, the following week, which is the week of the 10th, there is a possibility there. But more likely than, it would be the week of the 17th. And then, of course, we would have some at our regular board meeting as well. So I'm going to propose that we have we would have an additional special call meeting for PRRs the week of the 17th. All right, I don't know the dates because I got to make certain that there's space for us to do that. At somewhere. We got to get some space, right? We got to get M&Ns on their schedule. I mean, that's what happens with special call meetings. You have to just make sure everybody's on board and that there is a location. But I am going to really try to get the week of the 17th on the calendars as quickly as possible, and check with him and see if we would be able to move forward on having that special call meeting. I mean, with him coming back, he may be familiar with some of the cases anyway. I mean, I don't know if they're, brand new to him. So I think he's reviewed some of them. But my goal is to have a special call meeting the week of the 17th, and then on the 26th, we would have the remainder. So if we could get possibly 3 done on, that week, and then the remainder of the 4 on the 26th, or something close to it, that would be very helpful to us. It also goes back to the fact that we still have this outstanding issue with Metro Legal regarding this position that they received during the budget time. And so I didn't know, was that on the agenda?
It is.
Okay, so I'll leave that for you to discuss. But, I haven't had this discussion with Attorney Yoon to see like what he can accomplish, but we're going to, whatever I need to do to help him to get that done, we'll get it done.
It sounds like it'll be well rested.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding with a newborn. That's not possible.
That's not possible, right?
Questions on that issue? I see Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Fitchard. Appreciate continuing to move this forward. I just wanted to make sort of a technical recommendation that if at all possible, if there are 4 ready, to put 4 on the agenda. We can always look at the time and push one out. What I think that, however, because we are doing this special work and we are trying to catch up, that if we can get through 4, that would be great. And we don't want to be sitting there, finish 3, and we can't get to the 4th one because it wasn't calendared. So the top 4 that you have available, you can put them on the agenda, and if we need to roll one to the general meeting, we then have that option. Thank you.
Did I see another hand? Director Witzel, I'm sorry, Mr. Witzel.
Director, you trying to speak something over my life?
Well, I always think about board of directors, so I have to break myself of that habit. Okay, so, Mr. Witzel.
Yes. Question about, I know it's a matter of space availability. Are we looking at, during the week of the 17th, are we looking at a Wednesday like we normally have them, or is it just kind of wide open?
If we can do this meeting at the regular location over on Second Avenue at Howard School Building, yes, that would be fine. I just don't know what they already have on their calendar for that week, because a lot of meetings are kind of moved around because of the election time. So even though the election's not until November, but she had like October kind of like calendared off. And if we can't have it there, it's really just going to depend on what their schedule looks like over there. But if we can't have the special call meeting there, I mean, we've had our meetings in the past at Lentz. I might be able to try there as well. just because it's more difficult to get on a community, like how we're doing it now, it's a little bit more difficult to get on their agenda, on their calendar. And so usually using those metro office buildings sometimes it's easier for me to get to them. But I'll let you know, I'll check on that tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Witzel, did you have a preference?
I don't, I was just curious.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on the accelerated review schedule? Comments? Judge Brown.
Just one question. If we don't notice something, we can't consider it. Would it be possible to limit, to list more than 4, just on the case one of them falls through, so we've got a backup, so we could at least consider 4 that day? Go ahead and notice 5 or 6, and then if we don't get to them, fine, but I'd rather have it noticed than not noticed.
Thank you, Judge Brown. Mr. Goddard.
Yeah, I will speak with the executive director after the meeting about dates. I'm not available every date that week. My only comment is it would probably be good to confirm that we have a quorum committed to be there at whatever time we pick for in a special called meeting like this. Like suggestion.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. All right, if there's nothing further, then the next item on the agenda is the MNPD 45-day PRR response compliance report. Director Pitcher. There was concern expressed about our continuing to keep up with what recommendations from this committee that have gone to the MNPD for consideration of disciplinary action have been complied with within the 45 days in which they have to respond, and which have not been responded to within that 45 days. So this agenda item is asking staff to kind of enumerate just where we are on that, if we're in full compliance or if there's some shortcomings somewhere. So.
All right, I'm sending you down the report. I asked Mr. Crowell Williamson to get this together pretty quickly. I hope that it addresses what it is that you were asking for. So there are 7 reports that are awaiting the chief's response, and 7. And some of them have some extensive days outstanding. The first one, the number of days since the board approval, 350 days. The next one is 336 days. There's one 282 days, 245 days, 245 days, 217 days, and 98 days. And then we have, it's an 8th one that's 5 days, 6 days, because it was sent out late. And so as you look at this, and we printed another one as well. I will send that to you. But this basically is the case number, what the allegations. I have another one that actually has the board's recommendations, and then you see the allegations. And then when the board hearing date occurred and the number of days, basically since the board made the approval and it was sent to the chief. And so, as you take a look at that, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Floor is open. Ms. Brown.
Do we have any indication from the police department as to what the holdup is on any of these?
No, we did not send I wanted to have a discussion here first, and then I think that we need to draft a letter to him, to the chief about why these are outstanding. I did not reach out to the chief beforehand.
Right.
Do we have any policy for how long we would wait to send an inquiry? If it goes past 45 days, do we do it at 60 or Seems like we should have some follow-up if they're past their 45-day deadline.
Right, what it says in the MOU, and I think what we negotiated was that if they needed more time, that they would just send us information that said that they needed an extension. And that isn't happening. It could be that they haven't looked at the MOU in recent time, and we haven't really articulated anything to them in regards to that. But it's based on what we have in our MOU, that section is not as clear as you just said. We didn't have that information in, which might be something that we put in this new MOU.
Right, well, there's nothing to prevent us from going ahead and inquiring on our own regardless of the
Right, that's
MOU.
correct. That's
And
correct.
I would think of, you know, at 60 days, we ought to send an inquiry over as to what's the problem.
Let me say that this is quite unexpected. When we asked for this data, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, if you need to confer. Is there an extra copy at the end of the line there?
We want to provide that to Captain Laura.
As I was saying, when this request was made by the board, I had been tracking the aging report, but not specifically in regards to the response time. But being familiar with what the MOU says, I appreciate what you're saying, Judge Brown, but the onus is on the chief of police to comply with the 45 days. And certainly, if it goes past the 45 days, I think it is our obligation, you know, to pull his coattail on it. You know what I'm saying? But not in the way of, hey, when can we expect it? But are you aware that you are out of compliance? And that would be the tenor, Madam Director, of any communication that, as far as, you know, my personal board opinion is concerned, that any communication in regard to this issue should take. I find it to be quite unacceptable myself. I don't know about anyone else. When you're looking at more than a year response time on an issue of police misconduct that has been sent to the chief's desk, for it to go beyond a month and a half period on issues that are, I'm sure to some people, particularly those who are under the threat of discipline, a very important issue. Okay? I'll yield right there to Ms. Spencer.
Thank you. I also find it particularly concerning, given that out of the 7-4 also include an obstruction of rights. And all of these, except for the use of force review, have multiple allegations. And so at this point, I would think it would behoove the chief to offer an explanation for what is the reasoning behind and basically what's going on for being out of compliance for so long. There's multiple allegations for almost all of these, again, except for the use of force review, so D 2020-003. And there's been just so much time. So when we have so many allegations, there's clearly work that needs to be done. And so I think it would behoove the chief to offer an explanation directly to what's going on here.
And I will say on this other report, and I just printed one, there is like the board has sustained a lot of those allegations. And so they're not like not sustained allegations. In the majority of them, there are at least one allegation that we sustained, even if we did not sustain the others. And I will send that report to you all as well.
Ms. Goddard.
2 points, suggestions for revision of this report before we send it over. One is the 45 days starts from when the chief or the department received our report. So there's probably not going to be too many days difference there, but if we could list those, I think that might be helpful in terms of figuring things out. And second, at least 2 of these, we didn't find any violations. And if I'm reading them right, 2020-003, D 2020-003, and CC 2021-039. I'm not sure it's clear we're expected to the chief that we need a response back if we didn't find any violation, but regardless, I think it would be helpful either with the allegations or instead of the allegations to put the allegations that we sustained. the police misconduct that we identified. Let that be somewhere on this as the column, so we know what hasn't been responded to, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I would think that if I were MMPD, that when I receive a non-sustained from the Community Oversight Board, that I would at least acknowledge that.
I think so. I think that, to me, it's a lesser concern.
A lesser concern, agreed. Right, right. Okay. I mean, if I'm the sworn officer, I want to know that it was not sustained by this board, and that would be the opportunity to, but no, your point is well taken. The priority certainly would be those in which they would sustain. However, I don't believe that the MOU distinguishes.
And let me say this for what Mr. Goddard brought up, which is a director-initiated, the 2020-003. That was a use of force review and audit. And so when it says no deficiencies identified, that means within that audit. It was not necessarily saying, you know, whether an allegation was sustained, because there weren't any allegations. It was a review. All right, the others are based on the board making sustainable or not sustainable dispositions. So just to clarify that. And for instance, let me just give you an instance. In CC 2021-011, the charges or the allegations are obstruction of rights, false arrest, adherence to policy rules in preliminary investigations. Number one was sustained, number two was sustained, and number one, which was the adherence to policy rules, was unfounded. So that's what I'm saying, like throughout this process, you'll see, and I'll send you this document as well, so it may be a little clearer for you. But that is 303 days out.
I just wanted to make clear that, you know, I'm not here trying to make up policy. Not to say that anyone else is, but, you know, to Mr. Goddard's point, I think it's hard to distinguish, you know, when the one thing that we can fall back on is what's in the MOU, right? Okay, and the MOU says respond by 45 days to any submitted PRR. And so that's all I'm focused on, really, you know. And so that would apply to anything that he's received in that format, okay? Of course, Commander Laura is taking notes back there. You know, that's why, Mr. Goddard, I want to make that, you know, for the record. All right, thank you. Any further discussion on the aging report? Well, at least the MMPD response aging report. Any other discussion or guidance? I'm looking at Attorney Fox over there and wondering if she has anything to add in that regard, and if not, that's fine. But I think that the MOU says what the MOU says.
Correct. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, all right, thank you.
One comment.
Mr. Brown.
Could the board get as part of its monthly meetings then any cases that are in violation of the 45-day rule?
Mm-hmm.
Just part of the executive director's report.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Dr. Hilton?
Thank you, and I was actually, Member Brown, thinking dashboard. Do you think that we could create and post on the website a dashboard so that not only we as board members, but all of our publics are watching to see, and this is accountability across the board, like how long is it taking us to get a PRR out? And then how well did the police department do meeting the 45-day? And were there some distinctions about, well, they didn't prioritize it because we basically found facts unsustained, right? To have all of that, you know where I'm going. I love the colors, I love the graphics, and I most love transparency and shared work with our community. So I definitely ask that that be a standing report item for this board in this meeting monthly. And if we can have the bonus of also having an at-will dashboard, that also would be helpful. Thank you.
Director Fisher, so we can do that?
Well, I don't know. I've got to check with Metro IT to create that. So I will let you know.
Okay, well, now I'm going to take it, I asked first, so. Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Usually I take the bait. But at this point, I was actually looking at our internal data buddy here. I understand that sometimes creating the dashboard and testing out and looking and see if it gives the information does. And so it feels a little bit more like if this is on first reader, is more of a request around internal research and development. But you know I'm good at follow-up
Yes,
on
you are.
second notice,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
thank
Director
you.
Fisher, it's okay for me to acknowledge?
Yes, absolutely.
CW?
Yeah, so this is not this particular metric per se, but I know Dr. Valier was looking into the feasibility of having dashboards, and he deemed it to be a pretty unwieldy undertaking. It's not to say that it can't happen. Obviously, MNPD has dashboards, and I love a dashboard, don't get me wrong. But if we are to pursue this, I would not expect it to be done by next board meeting. It would be something that would require a fair amount of staff investment.
Isn't there the data department, though, doesn't Metro generally have an accountability and a dashboard place? And so as we're looking at feasibility, can we not at least inquire as to whether or not those resources would be available to assist with it? But that's exactly why I asked internally, because if this is just beyond our scope and we are trying to be very, very good stewards with limited capacity. And so in no way do I want to ask for shiny colors and it gets in the way of our ability to get PRRs out, right? So thank you for giving that first. And if this is something that the Metro General data wizards might want to help take on, I would love that we make that ask as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that we could have with the Office of Performance Management within the mayor's office. We talk with Bruce Clark with some regularity. So that would not require building a whole something on our website. It could be hosted on whatever they have. So we can initiate those conversations.
All right, so Director Fisher, we'll leave that in your hands. Any further discussion on that? Or on the issue overall, the 45-day response? Hearing none. This board is made up of 11 members. As of this date, it's my understanding that we have 2 vacancies. Is that correct? And effective in January of 2023, we'll have an additional 3 vacancies, I believe. That sounds a little onerous to me. But I'd like to encourage the people of Nashville and Davidson County to get involved, to step up, to come in and roll up your sleeve and put in some work. Doesn't matter what zip code, doesn't matter what part of, we need your input. We need your energy. We need your commitment. Now, having said that, a little dramatic about that, but I'd like to have some kind of understanding of where we are with the current vacancies, Madam Director.
So this particular round. And that information was sent to Vice Mayor Schulman August, they resigned August the 4th. It was sent to him August the 8th. They noticed it. And from my understanding, we have only one nomination, and that is from the council. The council had a pick, as well as the community had a pick. We only have one person at this point, from my understanding, that will move forward, as long as they've gotten their information in correctly. And that was a nomination that I sent to you all from Councilmember Hurt. And so that would still leave one vacancy that is a community selection. And it may be that the community wasn't aware enough, or they don't know how to go about the process. It's not really clear to them, but I'm hoping that Vice Mayor Schulman will put it back on the schedule for the, once this process is finished, October, it'll be done this month. I'm sorry, October, I think October the 4th, and October the 4th. And then, I'll be there at that council meeting to just implore them to submit this open vacancy so that we can try to get someone and get the position filled by November, hopefully. I'm hoping, if not November, December. We're still going to be, even if this particular person is elected and appointed to the board, we will still only have 10 people. We'll have a total of 10 board members. So,
If this one person.
yes, because we have 9 people now who are currently serving, and then if this person is elected to the board by the council, then we would still have, we'll be one short. And then we have 3 people rolling off in January. That the terms that are expiring is Dr. Hildreth, Sean
That is-
Witzel.
That is a position, Dr. Hidges was appointed by the mayor,
Correct.
so that shouldn't be a problem with that one.
And Mr. Nguyen.
And Mr. Wynn? Seriously?
A 2-year term.
Okay, wow, that hurts already. That hurts already. Okay, so we'll do what we can to keep the urgency
Yes.
about that issue. And possibly our community liaison can
Yes.
maybe get with some of our community-based organizations
Yes.
and make sure that they understand that the process is, it takes maybe 40 minutes to fill out the app, maybe 30 minutes or less to fill out the application. And we need people who are going to step up and be courageous and be a part of this, okay? So, I see Judge Brown.
But we've got the 3 coming up in January. That's something that maybe we can get on the media, the TV, and something that these vacancies are open. Some of them are council positions, some of them are obviously community-based, but if we can get some publicity out and people can, as I understand it, people can go ahead and submit an application early or something, so, get ahead of the curve, so we've got the councils ready to be able to vote in January on those 3. Otherwise, we're going to be crippled. And obviously, the council always looking around for people they can nominate, and so we've already got one there, but council members will probably take care of those appointments, the mayor, but the community, we need to get some publicity out, and,
That's a good
WPLN,
point.
and that, get some publicity out to submit it, have some draft, the forms. Frankly, it may take a little longer than 30 minutes, but it did me, I know. But we need to get ahead of the curve on that, or else we're gonna be short. We can be short.
Yeah, we're gonna be
I
short.
agree, and I don't want to get real bogged down in this discussion, but I do have a question. Can we, in advance of the vacancy, notice it?
I don't have it. I
Let's-
don't
let's
see
get an
that. Yeah,
answer
I
to
can
that.
get an answer to that,
Let's get an
because
answer
I
to
don't
that.
see anything wrong with it, but I just wanted to make certain that, yeah,
It doesn't have to be a formal notice, it's just getting.
Yeah, getting the information out.
Getting the information out.
Yeah, on social media and, there's radio stations.
Sure.
We have media here too.
We
They
do.
can- Yeah, so yes.
So if we could, and not in a real formal sense, Madam Director, but just get some idea of what a campaign looks like to do
Yes.
that?
Yeah, yes,
Just an idea, and just for the purpose of the public, and I know that you have questions, we are going to have a public comment. For those in the public who would like to ask questions, that we may be able to answer or to make comments, we'll have those at the end of the meeting. I don't want to ignore anybody who raised their
Right.
hand or anything like that. Dr. Hildreth?
Thank you. So real quick around that point, low-hanging fruit, and not to contradict an earlier conversation about speaking for the board. we all remain private citizens, and many of
Yes.
us do have social media presences, and some of us actually use it in the service of this work. I, for example, on my personal Twitter, try regularly, I don't always get it, but this week I did. My pinned tweet for the last 24 hours has been the public notice of this meeting.
Yeah.
So there's a link to the website, there's a link to the television bit, and said, hey, join us. And then I retweeted it about 2 hours before the meeting to make sure. We all can do that. So every single one of our constituencies can go find the official information to say there is a vacancy. And pro tip, go get the Metro website where the application process is on, link that and put it in, so help your people go straight to the source. That's, we can all publish that. So, recommendation, thanks.
Absolutely. Any further discussion on that issue? Okay, hearing none, we go then to the body-worn camera editing investigation. This issue has been of great interest to the people of Nashville and Davidson County, and as well as of this board. This board is singularly, and its staff singularly responsible for the identification of this issue through its normal process, just through its normal process, okay? And so therefore, and it kind of has, captured, as we all know, a lot of media attention. But at this point, the COB and this board has launched its investigation in compliance with what will probably, in compliance with the opinion that we received from the law department, that we cannot request an investigation by an external department or agency such as DOJ, the Attorney General, the District Attorney's Office, or any other third party until after we've conducted our internal investigation. Okay? I need everyone to be clear on that within the sound of my voice, that we cannot go outside according to an opinion that was rendered by the legal department. And I think consistent with the charter as well. Okay. That we cannot go outside until we conduct our internal investigation. Our internal investigation is underway. You've heard from Director Fitchard about the request for evidence from the MMPD. We asked for and have received, in compliance with our request, the videos and the logs from the MMPD, and we appreciate that. And certainly they're complying with that request, puts the ball back in our court now. And so as we look at what's next in terms of how do we make sure that we fulfill our obligation to the people, okay? And that is that we must have a methodical analysis of that data and then come up with some findings related to that data. And in that regard, I hope I'm not springing this on you, Director Pitcher, but I turn to you, and now that we have those videos, and we know that there's still some work to be done, can you explain from your perspective what that next step might be?
In regards to what they've sent us?
Yes, our internal investigation overall.
Well, I think our I listened to what the opinion, and I respect Metro Legal's opinion. I do think that, and I've said this, and I know that many may disagree with me, but I do believe that, seeking an outside opinion on that opinion is important, number one. Number two, I'll say that, at the executive committee meeting, I did bring to your attention that there are other opportunities for software that could be used to make certain that this never happens again, that would be something facilitated through the police department. The software that I mentioned was Trulio, I think Trulio. And I spoke with the creators of that, and they have been using that in other departments. You know, it is something that they have considered a best practice, and from other chiefs of police, they've used it. I provided some of that information for you. I can provide it for those who weren't at the committee meeting, that information. It is a body-worn camera system analysis, and it would check to make certain. It also gives a text of any interactions between officers and citizens, and it would be able to help reduce risk within police departments really quickly. It would show whether officers have a pattern or a practice of misconduct or misbehavior. And so I think that that is something that I am going to really advocate for the police department to have. I think it would be helpful. But as for in this instance, you know, I haven't had an opportunity to check in and look at all the videos that we received. Mr. Williamson has, so I'd like him to come up and talk a little bit about what was there so that he can explain to you what we actually received.
You have the floor.
Thank you. And much of it already was outlined in Director Fitcher's Executive Director report. But what we found when we were reviewing it is effectively what Commander Lara sent. Roughly 70% of the videos do not contain any sort of redaction at all. 30% that do, the majority of those redactions are for permitted reasons. For instance, juvenile information, social security numbers, addresses, things of that nature. There were only 3 instances of of profanity being removed. Yeah, and that is sort of where we sit. Currently, we have audit logs for each one of those videos. We do not have yet the videos themselves. We kind of asked MNPD to put that on the back burner so they could provide this audit log to us, which they did according to the timelines we requested. So now the question that sits before the board is, what do you want to do with that information? Because we have a large spreadsheet indicating that by and large, there were only 3 redactions made against policy. And I think it is up to the board to determine what to do with that.
Is there a possibility that further, more detailed review or sampling might challenge the results that we've received? Or have you reviewed enough and sampled enough to accept what we have received with confidence?
To answer the second question first, have not reviewed enough videos to determine anything with confidence. I think that we could undertake that internally. I do want to stress that that would require, even if we just do a sample, would likely require hundreds of hours of staff time. And that's a lot of time, obviously. So if we are to go that option, I would ask we weigh it carefully. But yes, to answer your first question, there is some possibility that if we review the videos ourselves, we find something that MNPD did not flag. Mostly, I think, because they did this process automated, right? They did a waveform analysis, which flagged differences for them, and then they reviewed those differences for us and put those in the audit log. If we were to sit and listen to every minute of every video, it's conceivable something else could come up, but that would require listening to every second of every minute of every hour of every video, which is a lot.
Yeah, we're back to, you know, what is our obligation, right? I mean, and then what is reasonable, okay? And the waveform analysis, for just purposes of explanation, just compares the voice, if you will, by the sine waves, and where there's a divergence, okay, then it checks it and puts a mark in it, and that way, whoever is looking at the data, at this occasion from MNPD, can go back and say, oh, there was a mark, let's see what that redaction was, right? Am I tracking so far?
From my understanding, yes, in this case, it would be the absence of a waveform, because it would be something being
Gotcha.
clipped out, but yes, generally,
The
that
absence
is
of a
my
waveform.
understanding.
And the solution that we were looking at is more of a dragon language type of interpreter, which actually converts the audio to text, okay?
correct.
And does a comparison at the text level, and then identifies, you know, kind of spits that out, and identifies where the divergence is on a text-based, so it automates that audit log. So just so that we're clear here, it is a deeper level of analysis in a language form. However, the question before this board remains, this is where we are right now in our investigation. What is our obligation? What is your input? And the floor is open. Mr. Goddard?
I did not want to go first, but no one else raised a green waiver, so I would say this. I think, to my mind, and again, I hope it's clear. It's always the case. I hope it's clear. I'm just speaking my thoughts. I think we've got two questions. One, do we believe this analysis is adequate to identify redactions of audio, muted redactions? And for my mind, it is. The waveforms either have a waveform when there's noise and they're flat when there's not. So you can see when any audio has been redacted. Now, and I think, with all due respect, Mr. Carl Williamson, we can replicate that, I believe, with far, far fewer than gazillions of hours. We may need a little software, we may need to hire a consultant briefly, but that can be reflected. I don't have a lot of concern about that. My greater concern, the second question, rather, I should say, is there more that needs to be investigated in terms of whether anything more like this is happening, whether officers above the two non-sworn individuals had knowledge of this? And I think that's more witness interview and that sort of thing, and the thing we can do some of fairly quickly. But I see those as two separate, clearly closely related, but two very different questions. I hope that's helpful. Those are my thoughts.
Floor is open. Judge Brown?
I think the original start of this, we had very legitimate questions on the report where this came up. And I think the Metro's police department's response to it was inadequate, and it raised, frankly, more questions than it answered. But we've gone through this process now. We've got the material in. We've gotten a substantial number. It's not a high percentage, but it's still a substantial number of reviews. And all the thing we've turned up is essentially the three cases in which some language was deleted. We've not found at this point anything else that was deleted. And from my standpoint, I think we've reached a point where we've made a reasonable investigation on it. You know, if we wanted to ask for another small sample of videos, I mean, that could be done to do this wave analysis on, but frankly, I think we're just getting off track on our primary function to get our PRRs done, and I think this has been answered, that there's nothing. Yeah, they made a stupid mistake on taking out some profanity, but that's all that we've found at all. And you know, there were a lot of other questions raised. Could have this happened? Could have that happened? But there's no basis for, I can see, for the board spending a lot more time on it. I think it's frankly time to move on.
Floor is open. Okay, Dr. Hildreth.
No, is there somebody else?
Spencer?
Yes. Oh, okay.
I think particularly, given that we're still working on like a staff analysis of all the data related to the videos, I think this is still very much, really, truly, I guess to say, in our purview to continue investigating this. I would prefer to definitely have a full staff analysis where we feel like everyone that is going to be looking at this video has had their chance to really give their own analysis and input on where there might be mistakes, perhaps. I mean, for one, thinking through, like, as you were explaining around the different softwares, if one software would catch the initial redaction that started the whole process, like, does that software catch it? because I remember the conversation was that it was such a minute sort of redaction that you almost couldn't register it unless you really, really looked at it hard. And so I think that is a concern I still have. And I am also very much, still on the floor with, Member Goddard's question around, second question especially, around thinking like, what else, how far does this kind of go around, like, then above the two, folks that weren't sworn officers. And so I think there's still plenty of questions that are definitely in our purview and that we still need to be able to answer before we kind of let this go. I think that there's just too much more work, and also perhaps still increasing the sample size as well, would definitely give more breadth to saying, to this investigation. And I think would give a lot more validity to what we're saying and the concerns that were brought up in the first place.
Absolutely. And before I go to Mr. Nguyen and then over to Dr. Hildreth, just for the point of clarification, the 343 videos that we received in two separate batches from MMPD, does that represent the total number of video evidence that were requested by the COB, or is it just a portion of those that have been requested by the COB in the complaint process? This number 343, does it represent the totality of videos related to COB complaints?
Yeah, I think so. Is that, you want to speak on that,
Commander Laura?
Just from what I understand, good evening. From what I understand, the videos that were provided, we had 47 requests for this, 40 audit files, and those files itself came out to be those 214 videos. So of those 214 videos, we had 3 that were found to have something.
Where's the number 343 coming from? Okay, so you were giving me the first half.
I'm sorry, the first half, and then the second half, that was the first half, so it was 343, I apologize. The first, within the 47 requests, they audited 343 body-worn camera, in-car cameras. So there was 47 MNCO requests, 40 audit files. Within these 47 requests, we audited 343 individual videos. So we looked at the requests that the COB made, which were the 47 incidents, and then out of those, there were 343 videos that made up all 47 of those. And so that's everything that was asked of us within those. We audited every video within those 47 that were requested by MNCO, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and hold tight, don't go
Yeah, no,
anywhere. And I just wanted to clarify that because that is the universe that we're dealing with, right? And as a matter of further investigation, what I was suggesting is that of that 343, we kind of randomly sample, maybe even 10%. I don't know. I don't know what's effective. I don't like the random sample because if you miss one, that's important, right? All right, you're subject to scrutiny, particularly, we don't know how critical that one might be. So, I guess I'm here, debating myself, but that would help. That would make me kind of shy away from the idea of a sampling. Just I'm putting that out there personally. But having said too much already, I'm going to go with Mr. Nguyen and then Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, Chair. I've thought on this quite a bit. Body-worn camera technology is new. It's new for police departments around the country. A lot of police departments still haven't adopted it yet. This new technology, takes a lot of review, policy-wise, who manages it, who's the oversight. I would like for the police department to guarantee us that they put, like most divisions in the police department who have their own SOPs or standard operating procedures, some procedure of signing off of a commander, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, to review any altercations, any editing, and no matter what it is, of juveniles or whatever the police department deems they need to edit, that someone reviews it and puts their name on it, who can be held accountable for any editing that's done to any body-worn camera from here on out. I mean, we don't need to revisit this again and again and again. The board can't afford that. If we lose, there's accountability from us, the public asking, why are you accepting this kind of management of something this critical? So that's my comment. I just think that we should get some feedback from them or a suggestion to them that they change their procedures on who manages the body-worn camera footage and have someone in command sign off on it if there's any changes. So we can go to that person and bring them before this board and say, why did you sign off on this editing, auditing, muting, whatever you want to call it? Thank you.
Commander Laura, can you bring us back a response to that? Well, you don't have to wait till next meeting, but if you could communicate back with the executive director in direct response to Mr. Wynn's recommendation, that would be helpful. Okay, do you see any roadblocks to doing that? Okay, fantastic. Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. You're all sharpening my thinking. I'm seeing a timeline, the past, the present, and the future. And so my comments are just going to speak to the priorities that I think that I have as an individual member based on what we have experienced and the wisdom that's shared from this table at this time. In terms of the past, being a sort of resource hawk, I am very, very jealous of our resources, time, effort, and personnel. I personally am less concerned about delving into the past files beyond the 343 that we've done so far. And if I can just get the math right, because we shifted language, we talked about percentage, 70%, 30%, and then we talked about the 3 exceptions. So if the universe is 343, that means that 30% that were exceptions, legitimate exceptions, juveniles, hospitals, et cetera, that should be around 103 of the files. So that the 3 questionable exceptions for profanity, right? So we're 343, sort of 103 and 3. I just wanted to make sure that that funnel is right, because I don't think we got that clearly, and I know that people are playing along at home. So with that, I am less interested in us expending any more resources to go back and look inside of those 343 or hunt others. I'm sort of satisfied that we just got that to happen, put that math out on the table, and I hope it's going to show up on websites and in news reports, okay? Where we are with the present, I am very much one for coming up with ensuring that we have procedures and protocols that are going to be established now and followed from now into the future. So everything that we've spoken of prophylactically from, I think it was an executive committee meeting that would have been towards the end of July. And I don't even remember exactly what they were, but we had some, well, you know, what are we doing here? Those procedures, the tighten up, I want those procedures. I actually remember when I'm going to take what was put on me. I was really hoping your recommendation gets turned into a motion that we send sort of direction to the department that that's what we want. So I'm sort of like what he said around commander sign off on all of the 103 by name so that there can be accountability. And so my last thought is under my priorities, focusing on accountability does take me back into the past. Remember, I do want to know who knew what, when did they know it, and what did they do or not do about it. So I am interested in expending our precious resources according to our mandated authority capital to say, yeah, let's finish the personnel investigation of how did this happen. That's the part of the backward look that I think we still owe our community. Oh, and there's a piece of going forward. The last piece of going forward is that software that you mentioned, Director Fitchard. Part of the future accountability is that we have a system where the random checks going forward, we can set up checkpoints. They set up checkpoints for us. Turnaround's fair play. So the electronic artifacts that we receive going forward may be subject to spot checks by this software that you have mentioned. So those are my recommended priorities just from where I sit. Thank you.
Wow. Judge Brown, and then Mr. Holloway. I'm sorry, Mr. Holloway, I didn't see you.
I understand, but, this is, seems like something real basic, something real simple. It really depends on who does what, who says what. You know, I'm a prime example of it. I could have done something, and it's like I've done the worst thing in the world, but someone else, a good old boy, can do the same thing, and he get a pat on the back. So this seemed like something that's real simple that somebody has no intention of doing. It's just something that's real minor. And we really shouldn't take it lightly. And what we was introduced to at the board meeting, this automated board camera review, that is the way of the future, believe it or not. And what I would like to see, somebody from another department, another city, to come and address the board, how that's working with them. And we can verify to the police department, this is what we've been exposed to, and this is what they're doing in this city, this is how this works, this is how it would benefit us if we had this. So this is the way of the future. So this thing that happened, despite it happened for a reason.
And I'd like to say this about what Mr. Holloway said, like this Trulio software, it automatically scores officer language, it detects events. I sent this all to you. It deals with professional behaviors, which they say, it was created based on, when I met with the creator, he and the FBI Academy had created this together in kind of unison. And he said that, you know, they were looking for professional behaviors, trying to make our police departments the most professional, you know, across this nation, all of them. He was looking at were they, you know, explaining why they were, you know, either in whatever the encounter was to whoever they were subjected to stop. Explanations, was there gratitude and politeness and formality? It's scoring all of that. It's also looking at risk behavior. So this is some software that I think that would be very helpful for our department too, right? So they were looking at, was there any directed profanity, regular profanity, a threat, or any insults? So they are scoring all that, as well as taking any piece of evidence that you have, any piece of body worn camera footage. You get that, you receive it, you put the software, you know, put it in the software, and the software will give you a text of the encounter. And it will highlight it and do all of these fancy things that I think are fantastic. Because I think overall, it is going to help identify officers who are at risk. The department now has something similar to that. I don't think that it's doing its job. It's antiquated and outdated, and I believe Mr. Holloway had it right when we talk about this is what the future looks like. It is moving forward really quickly, and it would be great if our department would invest in this software.
Excellent. Let's see if we can wrap our minds around this. To Commander Laura, can you do two things? And that is, okay, we've already talked about the suggestion made by Mr. Nguyen. Number two, I had asked, where does MNPD plan to codify what it's going to do going forward? in relations to redactions of evidence. And if it's already there, which I believe it is in some shape, way, or form, okay, I would like for someone, that's part of the future, see. I'd like for someone, you know, to send that over to me. In other words, if it's a change in your policy and procedures manual, or if it's something that is a memo from the chief or whatever, I think that that's part of that institutionalization of a protocol going forward, along with what Mr. Nguyen suggested. So answers to those two things. Okay, next, without objection, we will ask that the executive director set up a demonstration of the software. And we'll determine what is the most effective time to do that. You know, after you speak with the developers and determine like how long it is it something we need to do at a board meeting? Is it a special something or something like that? So that's the third thing coming out of this, okay? Let's set up the software demonstration. Number three, as what Mr. Goddard indicated, there is still a matter of the investigation of the sworn officers who were involved. And I'd like to ask staff, and particularly the ED, to initiate a director's complaint that will encompass that investigation. Clear? And then finally, from my perspective, and maybe you can help me with this, Commander Laura and or CW, is those other two outliers, right? You know, there were 3 found, one of which we knew about, right? Those other 2 outliers, they were related to a request that was made by this board, and it was found that there was profanity in 2 instances that we were not aware of. Am I correct? If those were related to a PRR that had a finding of discourtesy, unprofessional conduct, or something like that, this board needs to revisit those. So I'll turn to you, Director Fitchard, and I'll ask you to work along with your staff and MNPD to identify the specific PRRs that were subject to that redaction, and to analyze it and to see if it has, no, bring it back to this board so this board can understand if it has any impact, okay, on the response, or on our recommendation, or on the response from the chief. Okay, so we don't want to lose those 2 outliers, okay? All right, having said that, I would like to ask, or I'd like to ask if there's anything else related to this issue that we need to address at this time. I saw Judge Brown, your paddle was up, your hand was up.
Oh, I think Mr. Wynn's suggestion about having a responsible officer sign off on perhaps ever body-worn cameras that come to us idea, that's something that perhaps is best handled with our review of the MOU with the police department, that we could address in the MOU, having the police department have a command officer sign off on what comes over, that it's been reviewed and is that accurate. That way, if it's screwed up, we've got somebody to point a finger at.
I love that. And I see heads nodding around the table. So Commander Laura, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Wynn.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Judge. I think it should be in our protocol, but administratively, for the chief to hold someone accountable for violating something in the policy, it needs to be in the policy. That there's overwatch and management of the body-worn camera and the in-car camera footage, that some supervisory person signs off on any editing. So in the future, whoever the chief will be after Chief Drake, if there's a problem, they can be administratively held accountable because they violated the policy of the body-worn camera footage management. So, but I don't disagree. I think it should be in both.
My mind feels like a yo-yo because I agree and I agree and I agree. I agree. Commander Laura.
Yes, sir. I just want to make sure that you understand that the only people that actually edit or redact or anything is the IT department. No officers, no supervisors have the ability or the authority to edit or do anything with video other than review it. So it's one of those where if anything is going to be reviewed and edited or, for any reason, it will come through the IT department. It doesn't go through the precincts, it goes through them. The only thing that the supervisors do is they take a random selection and they review to make sure that the officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But anything that goes out to the public is not done, and nothing is done by any sworn officers on the street. It's all by the IT department and those designated to do those redactions, I guess you would call them.
Wow, and I'm so glad you made that statement, because I think that makes the argument stronger for having a sworn MNPD employee who is subject to an investigation by this board, which a civilian is not, to have a sworn supervisor or officer or commander or someone in the upline to sign off that they are aware of each redaction made in a video, in a body-worn camera video that comes to this agency as a result of an evidentiary request. And so just to be clear, I want you to know that's what we're asking. You're saying it doesn't exist, it doesn't work that way right now. I get it. But we're saying we're asking that it work that way, that someone who is under the authority of a disciplinary policy that's enforceable by the chief be responsible. And it may be a big ask.
Well,
it may be a big, I don't know, but it's just the ask.
And if I could just say that all of our employees, just like we, exactly the perfect example is this case or this investigation where civilian employees did something they weren't supposed to, and they were disciplined under our policy. So they are subject to our policies, just like every other officer. They just have different functions in the department. And so looking at it, somebody's going to be held responsible. If somebody does something wrong, just like, again, like this investigation where we found that some civilian employees redacted something or muted something, they were subject to our policies and their SOP and the manual, and that is why they were disciplined for the mistake that they made. But somebody's always held responsible. I think the way you're looking at it is that you want a sworn person responsible. I don't know if that really makes a difference whether it's sworn or not. If somebody's designated by the chief saying you're the supervisor whether you're sworn or you're not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but let me be clear that we have recently received an opinion from Metro Legal that we cannot conduct investigations of civilian employees of the MNPD. And so therefore, if there's ever any kind of claim of misconduct associated with civilian employees, we would have no jurisdiction. So what Mr. Nguyen and what this board is asking is that there be someone in that chain of command of which this board has oversight, who signs off on all redactions. And that's the ask that we're asking you to make to the chief.
I will definitely
Just
bring
to be
that back.
clear.
Yes, sir.
Because we have no jurisdiction
So
otherwise.
So what I just want to be clear that you want to have an officer involved so that you will have jurisdiction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, I saw Mr. Witzel. I saw Mr. Witzel, then I saw Mr. Nguyen, and then I saw Mr. Goddard. So Mr. Witzel? It wasn't me. I'm sorry, Mr. Goddard.
Okay,
Mr. Goddard, I'm sorry, Mr. Goddard.
Yes.
And then I got you.
I think I can clarify this a little bit. The initial reviews above the two that were making the redactions were looking at redacted videos. And they could see if something was, that should be redacted wasn't, but they didn't have much ability to see that something was redacted improperly. So going forward, my understanding is there's going to be a log of every redaction kept, and the next person up the line that has to review these will see not only what hasn't been redacted, but have identification of what has been redacted. So we're going to see that half that was being missed. Second, I believe there are sworn officers fairly quickly in the chain of command above these two IT folks in the IT department or adjunct to the IT department. I mean, there were people they said they took direction from and this and that were sworn officers. I do not remember the officers' names, but in the
You're right,
witness
you're
interviews they
correct.
had. So we're not looking to have some person that didn't know anything about IT suddenly have to look over these. Whatever sworn officer is closely related to and part of overseeing IT, that's who we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
And I don't think that is an unreasonable ask. But it's best addressed in the MOU discussion because I don't know everything from the department's position and there may be issues.
Yeah, it could be addressed in the MOU, but I think that the position that Mr. Nguyen enlightened us on is that if it's in the policy, then it's enforceable, for lack of a better word, right? And so that's why we may talk about it in the MOU, but what is more fundamental is the ask that we're making right here, that the process change to include a sworn officer signing off on redactions. And then, of course, our follow-up would be to make sure that that is in the policy manual somewhere. So that's our ask, okay? Now, look, I just want to say that we're in the library and it closes at 6 and they aren't going to put us more than 6.
I just have a quick.
Okay, but I've got it. Okay, all right. I've got it. Okay. Dr. Fitcher, I'm sorry, no, Mr. Holloway. Dr. Fitcher, because I wanted to call on you so badly. I really did. Mr. Holloway.
Well, you know, they could put it in the policy because at one time, the communication system had civilian people and they had a sworn officer over the civilian people in communication. So all they have to do is just put it in the policy and the mayor sign off on it.
All right, Director Fitcher.
I just want to say real quickly that I don't want us to lose what is happening here, and I want you to be, understand that what happened was so egregious, right? That I don't want us to lose that. So putting it into the policy and codifying shouldn't be a big ask, because at this point, we don't know. We know what you've given us to us. We don't know if this was a bigger issue that, from other agencies who have requested information. And so I want you to remember that this was an issue that could have been exploited and been worse than what it is. So we shouldn't forget that. So that if we're talking about putting things in policy and holding people accountable, that should not be something that we go back and forth and back and forth. It should be like, yes, that's something that we need to do.
Absolutely. And I want to say that the department from the very beginning has shown that this was very, very important. We have not tried to sweep it under the rug. We came out, and as soon as we found out that things were happening that were not right, they addressed it. And so it may not be the way that, from the very beginning, we, even after all of this was done, we changed, the way we submit. We have a log now with all the redactions that we're going to submit to you. So you see every type of redaction that is made in every video. So that is something that we came and said, this is something that needs to be changed. The department has never downplayed this, and they've over and over said how serious it is. I think is coming up with a suitable solution, I think, is the concern that we're having right now. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not saying this is very, very important. We see that this has really affected the community, and we want to fix it. And we have started taking steps to fix it, such as getting the logs done. We have held people responsible for this, what has happened. We have addressed it over and over again because we don't want it to happen again. But again, I definitely understand your concerns. I will take it back to the department, to those who can make those decisions and see how we can continue working with you and figuring this out. So.
Excellent. We'll look forward to the best. Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you. Quick strategic note. Having been on the MOU negotiation team, version 1 and version 2, I do remember very clearly that as a part of that negotiation process, getting certain policies in place was something that happened at the negotiation table. So I would like to request of our negotiators, it's a both and, member Nguyen, that part of the negotiation for the MOU be contingent upon this becoming policy. So that's just my aspirational request to the negotiation team. Thank you.
Dr. Hildreth, knowing the topics that have been sent over in our request to open the MOU, there is an item for redacted records, and I think your comment is right on time, Mr. Goddard. Let's make sure that we include that in our negotiation. Thank you so much for that. I don't think we're going to, is there anything further on that issue? Anything further? Mr. Holloway? Thank you, sir. The order of the day has been called. Is there any objection? Hearing none, which will require a 2/3 majority vote to overcome anyway. The next item on the agenda is Metro Legal Update. And let's start with the legal opinion on our oversight of civilian employees. I know we talked about it, but if we can just have a brief response from Metro Legal.
I'm not really sure what you're asking of me. I sent out the memo, and that's our opinion, and I don't really have anything to add to it.
Okay, that's fair. And so for the sake of the public, I want you to know that this body made a request of Metro Legal as to whether or not we had jurisdiction, authority, the ability to investigate civilian employees of the MNPD. This is as a direct result of the issue that we've just finished discussing, wherein civilian employees manipulated evidence in what they muted body-worn camera video or audio. And as a result, we came to find out that we didn't have the ability to investigate them for misconduct. And so therefore, our hands were tied on that. And it's because of this opinion that was rendered by Metro Legal that this agency does not have jurisdiction over the more than 450 civilian employees, 400 plus civilian employees of the MNPD.
Well, I have one
Oh.
correction to what you're saying.
Oh, please help me.
It's not because of the memo, it's because of the language that was adopted in the charter. That's what we relied on when we interpreted it. So I'm not sure what I'm not sure if you're cross with our department in my interpretation or if you're upset with the language that was adopted. But either way, I'm just interpreting what was placed in the charter.
Oh, yeah, I don't really get upset or cross. I can be passionate. Which I am about this issue. And, but absolutely, Metro Legal relied upon their interpretation of the charter language in that regard. But notwithstanding, the fact is that we do not have jurisdiction over civilian employees of the MNPD. And so that's where that one comes from. And with that, if there's any questions, concerns, needs for clarification on that, if not, we'll move on.
I did want to add that this is in Metro, and I've said this before, this is Metro Legal's opinion. We also have an in-house attorney. I have not been able to get that person's opinion to see if there's a difference of opinion as they're reading and interpreting the law. And so I would like to, once that person comes back to work, to find out if their interpretation matches up with Metro's legal interpretation.
Right. And Director Fisher, we would think that you would continue that vigilance in all opinions rendered. Yes, ma'am. And we look forward to that response. Okay. The next issue for Metro Legal, as far as opinion is concerned, had to do, we asked Metro Legal, well, okay, look, we're running behind on PRRs because we only have one legal advisor, and this person was out for personal reasons for an extended stay. And, you know, we discussed earlier how we're going to try and play catch up on that. But we asked in the interim, is it possible for us to utilize Metro Legal resources in order to process some of these so we can stay on track? Part of that request came out of a budget agreement for fiscal year 22-23, wherein the legal department indicated, or I should say the mayor's office indicated in one of its final budget requests that they were allocating one FTE, full-time equivalent position, to the Metro Legal Department to work on behalf of the COB. Well, we thought that would be a perfect opportunity in our, you know, being down on resources for us to continue to expedite our proposed resolution reports based upon complaints made by the public. In response to our request, the Metro Legal Department responded by saying, well, we don't have, we don't feel as though it's an appropriate responsibility for us to take the investigations, if you will, and to do the findings and the analysis that would be necessary, minus any discipline, because that's done, disciplinary recommendations are done by the executive director. But the response is that Metro Legal doesn't feel that it's appropriate, and I know I'm paraphrasing, for them to actually take the investigative documents and to conduct an analysis and to come up with findings based upon that. And so therefore, the question becomes, well, what would that FTE be used for that would have been allocated for COB resources? I mean, because that's what we do, right? This is what we do. And so, of course, this is not a question for Attorney Fox, but certainly if I'm painting the picture incorrectly, you know, I know you were not shy about doing that, just jump in and tell me. But I need the public to understand that unbeknownst to, well, contrary to what we interpreted, that resource that was allocated in the budget to the legal department to assist COB, contrary to what we thought, how we could use it, that we've basically been, we basically said that, we've been told that, that they don't feel appropriate doing that kind of work. Okay, so I'm just gonna stop. I said enough, and I'm just gonna open the floor for any discussion, any comments on that? Any different interpretation on that? Anything further on that? Great, so we let the people, I wanted to let the people know, and so it begs the question of, okay, what are we going to do with that one FTE that was allocated for COB use in the Metro legal budget? And I have asked the executive director to set up a meeting between myself. Actually, I haven't made this request yet. It was another meeting I'm thinking about that you have already set up. But I'm asking now, in fact, I will call Mr. Dietz myself, and I'm going to set up a meeting with Mr. Dietz, and we're going to figure this out, okay? Because the solution, as I think we all kind of feel, is a resource allocation issue. And that position needs to be brought over to the COB, brought over to the COB's budget and under COB supervision. If it can't be done out in Metro Legal, okay, then it's got to be something that's brought over to our budget. And that'll be the conversation that I'll have with Mr. Dietz. Okay, all right, sorry for the long explanation, but I'm trying to be artful here. All right, the next one has to do with employment eligibility. Now, Attorney Fox, do you have any kind of summary on that for us?
You had asked whether or not the state law requires that the employees be registered voters of Davidson County, and I think that was asked because you were are filling some positions, and it is the opinion of the Department of Law that the employees are not required to be registered voters of Davidson County.
And that's a game changer, and we appreciate that, and we know that there were other findings as a result of that understanding that will have effect not only on this agency, but also possibly on other agencies within the local government. Yes. Yeah, let me just put a bow on this real quick. And so it's a game changer, possibly. So just to let the board know that Director Fitchard and myself have requested a meeting with Metro Legal to flush out and to clarify just what this means, okay? And to bring that back to this board, because we don't want to put any more bad information out there. Okay, so I will ask the board's indulgence. See, that's why we sent it out to you today, The last thing that we want to happen is for you to hear about this in the media, okay? That's not going to happen on our watch, okay? So, but I do ask for your indulgence to allow us to get clarification and to bring that back to you. We're not going to wait till the next board meeting to bring that back to you if we get that information. But we all know, beyond what the public knows right now, that this could possibly have sweeping implications. Okay, Mr. Goddard.
I just want to note, like, a lot of legal opinions and a lot of really good legal opinions. There were some additional thoughts, things for us to think about, advice in that, which is attorney-client privilege. And that letter right now has only gone to COB and to these board members and remains an attorney-client privilege document. If it's, and it's the board's privilege to waive, not individual members. So I would just encourage everyone, not that you would anyway, but just not to forward that particular piece of paper.
And I'll defer to Attorney Fox and to you, Ms. Goddard, the folks with the JDs in the room, about that. But I just think that it's just prudent that we not put this out there, at this time, because first of all, it's a draft as far as I'm concerned. It's not final, it's a draft. We are.
The more we say, the more it's out.
I understand. So it's out there. We did that intentionally to send it to you today. We did not wait until after we had a clarification meeting. So if it's out there, it's out there. And certainly, if someone requests it under an act, it will.
No, attorney-client
Okay.
documents are not.
Is,
That's my point.
the attorney-client privilege does not, okay, I'm having trouble seeing how that prevails here.
The conclusion is not attorney-client privilege. Everything
The
else in that.
attorney-client documents are not subject to the Public Records Act.
Okay, but is this document that you forwarded to this board, to us, and that we forwarded to this board, is it attorney-client privilege right now and not for disclosure to the public?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how we'll keep it, and there's the explanation.
That's what I was trying to say, Carlos.
Appreciate that, Mr. Goddard, appreciate that. All is good? All is well? Wonderful. All right, the Metro legal opinion on the external investigations, we talked about that. That we have to conduct our own internal investigation first. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. And just FYI, I have received a note that we have an extension of at least 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, if we need it here this evening. All right, is everybody okay? We're okay? Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the NAACP Tennessee State Conference letter. This was brought up, but not agendized necessarily at our last meeting. And so therefore, we did not have an opportunity to review in depth or to take an action. It has been included in your packet. I'm not going to read it, but the gist of it is that the NAACP State Conference Chair, Ms. Gloria Sweetlove, and her staff are asking for an external investigation to the body-worn camera incident by the Department of Justice or other outside agency. I think that the only prudent, and I'll look for every other board member to weigh in, that the only prudent response right now that we will give to the state chairperson, is that at this time, we must complete our internal investigation and that we will consider our next steps after that is done.
And I just want to have some clarity, because if we're doing an investigation and we can't interview based on what was said in the opinion, that we can't interview the 2 or 3 or 4 civilians that, did the actual redactions, then how can we complete an investigation?
Hold on. I'm sorry, Mr. Goddard. Okay. Was that
Was it.
That was it? Mr. Goddard?
Maybe I misread it, but I believe the opinion said was we couldn't investigate them for findings of violations and recommended consequences. They are certainly interviewable witnesses, as far as I'm concerned.
Attorney Fox?
I agree.
All right. Well, that addresses that. Okay.
I'm glad you raised that, though, because.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Different understanding.
That's a good point.
We need to know that.
But what we need to do is to not let this August 24th letter from the state conference chairperson lay dormant any longer, okay? So what I'm asking staff, what I'm asking the director to do is to respond to the state chairperson and to inform them of the situation. I'll just leave it at that, okay? Because I will see her in other places and I will hear about it. Okay, that takes us to the MOU Committee Task Force update. Director Fisher gave us her statement, her observations in her executive director's report, but I'd like to defer to Mr. Goddard for any further update on that.
Oh, I'm sorry, all right. No, I thought that was a good and complete description of where we are. If anybody has questions, we can certainly try to answer them, but I thought that was fine. Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Anything further? Now is the time for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board? Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board? Seeing none. That takes us to new business. I'm sorry, please, now's the time. Anybody? Judge Brown, Mr. Brown.
I guess as a matter of policy, we've had a couple of people were sitting here through the whole meeting, they finally gave up. If we're really interested in public comment, shouldn't we move that up and let them not be the tag end? Because they sat here very patiently through and never had a chance to say whatever they were going to say to us. I think that should be moved up in the agenda.
Mr. Brown, I was going to show you that arrow pointing up here to the top of the agenda.
Okay.
But I need the board just to reach a consensus that that's what we're going to do from this point on.
Well, obviously, great minds run in the same gutter.
I am honored. Okay, but if there's no objection, okay, I think that conforms to a lot of public meeting standards, and that's what we'll do. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Dr. Hildred.
So question, I am in favor of it moving up, but I also know that things happen in the meeting. And when there's somebody here who is hung in and then wants to have commentary on what happens in the meeting, that's important. So is it possible for the agenda item to be moved up, but not necessarily closed, so that it could be reopened at the end of the meeting? Should that be appropriate? I'm not a parliamentarian, so if I'm asking something inappropriate, feel free to tell me, but I'm just wondering about that.
I can just say that in the vast majority of public meetings that we've attended, that we've all attended, public comment is at the beginning of that meeting. As to whether or not we can bring it back, I think we can agendize it that way. We can agendize it any way we want to. So we can have it at the beginning and at the end, right? Okay, Ms. Spencer?
Conforming to the rules. So
Conforming
still
to the
with
rules.
timelines, sign in and everything. So I'm not asking for a free-for-all, and I also, if this is appropriate point to mention it, and we also have rules that we as board members don't respond to public
Right.
comment. So decency and order that we adhere to all other rules. I'm just asking that there be a possibility of a bifurcation
I like it.
to honor our public as much as possible.
Yeah, if that's not a problem, Attorney Fox?
I'll be happy to double check your bylaws, but I don't think it's a parliamentarian problem.
Okay, appreciate that. And, of course, public comments are not subject to debate or vote. Okay, Ms. Spencer?
I think my main question was, where were we thinking in terms of the agenda? And so I think what I wanted to suggest perhaps was after the director's report. Does that feel appropriate?
I
Or-
was thinking about
Right beginning?
after approval of the minutes, almost like opening, or after the chair's remark. But the executive director delivers a lot of information, right? Okay, that I don't have an objection to it, but, okay.
I think,
go ahead.
what I'm also concerned about is for folks that, are also running late, because, sometimes, we start right at 5, we started today at 4. And if people are coming off work early, then that gives them a little bit of extra time to try to make it in, just in case.
Any objection? I see Mr. Holloway. Any objection to, okay, no objection? Excellent. Mr. Holloway?
As far as, public, opinion, we probably need to check, see if anybody has something they want to say in the beginning, they want to address something when they first get here. And then it may be something people want to address after they hear what we have gone through. But if you come in here with something on the agenda, you want to say something up front, then we should somehow ask that question.
Agreed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Witzel?
So, and I agree with that. Would there be any limitations on if someone has already spoken at the beginning? Is that their one time, or is it if something comes out in a meeting that they want to speak on again?
I've participated in meetings when, as soon as you come in the door, there's a sign-up sheet for public comment, and you're informed that you have 3 minutes, okay? And that 3 minutes is not repeatable. It's 3 minutes. So I would imagine that unless there's something that is a part of, codified, statute or whatever here locally, that we could follow pretty much that same kind of procedure and say, hey, 3 minutes is 3 minutes. And Attorney Fox?
I've never seen a meeting that Metro has where people speak more than once as far as a time for the public to speak. So, I think you could either have it once, or you could choose which time you want to talk to, whichever one the board wishes to follow.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Further? Anything further? Director Fitcher? Any new business? Let's get turned around on this. Is a motion to adjourn actually required? Well,
We do have new business.
Oh, we do have new business?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I wanted Mr. Carl Williamson to kind of give an update on the body-worn camera policy report.
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Where we are with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
I'll make it brief, but, excuse me, I did want to make these every month in the interest of transparency, as we discussed. So as Director Fitchard already mentioned, I conducted interviews with a variety of organizations who have themselves conducted body-worn camera audits. That includes a variety of auditors' offices, such as Kansas City, Virginia Beach, Gainesville, San Diego, and Minneapolis, as well as other organizations like the Office of the Inspector General in Chicago and the Defender Association of Philadelphia. I used the data that I collected from those interviews to modify my research methodology. I changed the way that I requested data, modified audit forms, and developed a management response form that I am excited to implement. I'm working on scheduling and conducting a ride-along, which will be completed by the end of October. I worked with our community liaison to develop a town hall protocol and an attendance list for a pair of town halls that we were hoping to conduct in early November. And I finalized the audit form and the protocol for reviewing body-worn camera footage and made the initial data request of the department, including body-worn camera metadata, Form 213s, which are Metro's audit forms, and the internal audits that they conduct. I've been having a little bit of back and forth with Commander Lara just about how exactly to get that data, but that is all moving in a direction that I am comfortable with. We are very slightly behind, I would say, in terms of the timeline. There have been a couple of setbacks, specifically with the ride-along and with the data request taking longer than anticipated. The fact that we are unable to interview certain people within the body camera department of MMPD due to our potential investigation, and frankly, due to staffing difficulties, because I am the only staff working on this and I have a number of other things to work on, but I think we're in an okay place with it. The next steps, I already mentioned the ride-along. We're going to be reconceptualizing how we want the district attorney and the public defender to be involved in this process. We'll be scheduling and conducting those town halls, following up on the data requests, and hopefully building out our staff to get input on the audit form and protocol. And finally, determining when the appropriate time is to schedule and conduct interviews with MMPD training staff and body camera staff. So that's the body camera updates. I see a hand.
Can you just drill down a little bit about what these town halls look like?
Sure. Only a little bit because they're still in the works. But generally, I'm envisioning them to be a blend of having community organizations, having criminal justice stakeholder organizations, representatives from our government, and having community participation. So I kind of want it to gather a scope of body camera successes, failures, challenges, et cetera, from the major players in our criminal justice landscape, but I also want there to be opportunity for there to be community input and direct question and answering with those organizations. But we are still working that out. We're still ironing out who exactly will be present and other details.
Please keep us abreast, okay? Please
Absolutely.
continue.
Yeah, and the only other thing, seeing no other questions, also wanted to give an update on the policy advisory tracking report that I presented to you several months ago. When I spoke last, we had just sent it off into the ether to MMPD, and we got a response from Commander Gilder on September 2nd. It was a draft analysis of our initial report, and I met with Commander Gilder on the 23rd to discuss that draft response. He was hopeful that as a result of that conversation, they would be able to get us something by the end of this week. I was unable to get in touch with him today, but I will do so tomorrow to make sure that he's still on that timeline, and if not, that I have an updated timeline for you all. But they've been very fruitful conversations, in my opinion. I think that they have been very willing to hear where the gaps are, and I hope to have something to present to you at the next board meeting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I did want to mention one thing. Myself and a couple of different community organizations is trying, they're really hard to try to get a policing reform panel together. And so, in shooting for a November date on a Saturday, some workshops, and then just some panel of experts from across the nation to come and talk about policing reform, workshops on community engagement, and things of that nature. So I'll give you more information as we get it honed in.
Anything further? Hearing nothing, to entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? We are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.